Welcome back, everyone, to Your Breakthrough, the podcast, where we help you navigate your mind and life with triumph and grace. Today, we have Realtor Extraordinaire, Jessica Roth. We speak about her triumph and grace with ADHD and other challenges that she has had to face and overcome over the course of her life. Today, we will listen to her wisdom, her story, her journey, her wins, and her lessons. And let her show you that with any diagnosis, you can live well and thrive. Let's start the show. Welcome back, everyone, to my channel. We have a special guest today. We have Jessica Roth, and she's going to share with us her mental health journey, the importance of self-care, and what she loves. So we're going to kick things off. And if you could just share a little bit about your journey, your passions, and what things in your professional life brought you to the journey that you have today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I so for me, everything really started almost exactly 7 years ago. I had my youngest child, my daughter, and had my third C-section. And yeah, yeah. And I had reached my out-of-pocket maximum for the year. And I had been thinking about doing therapy for several years, to be honest, just because, especially after the second kid, motherhood got really difficult. And I was like, it's not going to cost me anything. So why don't I start therapy?
That's amazing.
And when I tell you that I have more or less been in weekly to bi-weekly therapy ever since, like, I was
It
like,
helps.
I had no idea I was so messed up. But it really, like, I would get to a point I could take some time off. But really it was a couple of super intense years where it was literally weekly and I would barely make it through the week till I got to my next appointment. Um,
Man.
yeah, and I had so much self-loathing and disbelief in myself and my ability to do anything. And I was in network marketing at the time, and I was a health and fitness coach, and I'm a plus size woman.
Mhm.
And finding that niche, like I was always constantly chasing that before and after.
Yep, that is
And,
completely understandable.
this is 2017. I feel like it was a huge thing then. It's
Hmm.
gotten so exponentially better now, but it really, it would get on me. And I finally, like, I had to walk away from it. I had to stop focusing on what I was putting in my body. I had to stop trying to work out, like do all of these things, because even just the smallest amount of pressure sent me into a shame spiral that I
Oh my
couldn't
goodness,
get
it
out
really
of.
sucks.
Yeah. And so, my therapist and I, we really worked through that. And um, it really wasn't until this year that I felt like I could even focus on my health without feeling bad if I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. That
Um,
makes so much sense.
yeah. And so, you know, we went through when the pandemic hit. I continued doing everything online. Um, Throughout the journey, I got diagnosed with uh, initially it was severe anxiety, moderate depression, and then a couple months later, ADHD. And which, when I looked back over my life,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I have ADHD. And that was one of the hardest diagnoses I've gotten for me to accept.
Really?
Yes.
So what was hard for you to, I guess, what? It was the stigma? What was it behind it?
It was just I think there was a little bit of like feeling like there was something wrong with me.
Yeah, a lot of women
And
even.
yeah, oh, shoot. Okay. And once I started learning about it, I dove into it. I read all sorts of books about it. Like I hyper focused the crap out of it and learned so much. And the more I learned, the more I was like, okay, I can use this. I I don't love people calling it a superpower because I think it really can be disabling, and
Yeah,
calling it a superpower can be disempowering to people who haven't figured out how to use it to their advantage.
that makes sense. So what
Um,
insights did it I guess provide you in learning basically going gung ho and finding out about your diagnosis and using it for your benefit because it is your superpower because you found it. But what
mhm.
insights did it provide you that you provide others?
So the biggest thing is that that was where a lot of anxiety came from.
Mm,
And seeing that and recognizing, oh, is this like actually anxiety or is this ADHD overwhelm?
that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And just like accepting it and being like, hey, I've reached my limit. You know, I am I am even still learning, like I am self-diagnosed
Hmm.
with uh, sensory sound issues. And I get overstimulated when there's lots of noise very easily.
I don't like loud, instant, fast sounds. I hate like, oh, it
Hmm.
just freaks me.
Yeah,
Can't do it. That's
yeah,
completely understandable.
yeah. And, part of it too has been also getting the right medications. And I think that was like part of it too is, if the depression side, like that could be cyclical.
Hmm.
And if things got better, like I could go off meds. And like I am such a holistic person that I didn't want to be on medications for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
But
that makes sense.
ADHD, it's a brain development disorder. You can't combat that. Yes, there's neuroplasticity and you can learn and you can rework, but ultimately what that meant to me was I was going to be on medications for the rest of my life regardless. And having to
Okay.
accept that and not let it mean what I thought it meant.
That is so important. So, in your opinion, what are the gaps and the challenges for women with ADHD? Do you think that these
Mm-hmm.
issues could be addressed in a more supportive environment? Do you think there's enough resources for them, or how do you navigate that?
Well, it's really interesting because my oldest is 12 and she has ADHD. We talk about how our brains just work
Ooh.
different than everyone else's or most
Oh, she's so
others.
lucky to have you. Yes,
And it's being able to advocate for her at this age and not
exactly.
have her go through the what's wrong with me?
That
Why
is
can't I
so
do
freaking
that?
important. Oh my
Why
goodness,
can't
that's
I
so
just
important.
do more?
Hmm.
And um, it was interesting because my husband is very neurotypical, and he had an issue with her getting on meds at
Did he?
such a young age. And I said,
Mm,
look, you're looking at it from the standpoint of someone who doesn't need them. And when they take them, it elevates them above everyone. This is a, sorry, people can't see my hands. Everyone, neurotypicals, they're all at the same level. And someone
hmm.
with an ADHD is below that. And the meds bring them up to equal with their
Yes,
peers.
that's important.
And her hers manifests extremely as anxiety, panic attacks, and so we can tell immediately like whether or not she's taken her meds. And when I let him know, I'm like, it's not giving her an advantage, it's bringing her up to equal with everyone else. That's when
That,
he was
yeah.
like, okay, that makes sense.
At least he
And so,
understood that.
mm-hmm. And I think it's just because it looks so different, ADHD in women versus in men.
Hmm.
It is so, it comes out as that anxiety. Like I used to call it my mommy monster. And when I when I would get overwhelmed, I would yell. And I
Um,
like just my energy was just fire. And I hated it so much because I didn't want to be a yeller.
yeah.
Um, and so being able to recognize that, um, I lost my train of thought. There it
No,
goes.
you're good. Hey, we're family
My
here.
man,
We're good.
I probably should have taken a booster a couple hours ago. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Um,
Real life.
yeah. Well, so it's really funny. I think I'm the most like funny person on the whole planet. So like it's just extra great. Like I'm here talking about mental health and I'm like not medicated right now. So that's excellent. Um, but it's just I think for so many women, it shows up as something else.
That
And it
makes sense.
seems like something else.
That makes so much sense.
And once you're able to recognize, like I have trouble getting started. I, I'm starting actually this next week with an ADHD specific life coach. Because I
That's
noticed
smart.
in my work, like, hey, I know once I get started, I'm gonna get in the groove. But
Mm-hmm.
I've had to learn how to protect, like once I'm in the groove, that is sacred space. Like
Eggs.
no one can
It really
interrupt
is.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I was still am a chronically late person. I'm either like super early or I'm late. Like there is no like, oh, just barely made it. Like it's either early or late.
That's it.
And it's time blindness because tasks just take longer. My dad, because my mom has severe ADHD
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't get diagnosed until her 50s. I believe it was her 50s. Um, and I'm like, her life would have been so different if she had
So
just gotten
different.
it even 20 years earlier. Um,
Man.
and so it's like, my dad described it as an ADHD person says, I have these 20 things I need to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to do them all today. Shoot, I only did two or three of those. I'm a massive failure.
Remember those two.
Whereas he's like, people who don't have ADHD know you can maybe do five of those things. But, and if they can only do two or three, it's like, oh, okay, like I'll save the rest for tomorrow. But the
Healthier
ADHD
thoughts.
person
Mm-hmm.
thinks, oh, I'm a failure because I only did these two or three things when I had these 20 things to do.
That is so true. So when anxiety or fear strikes you, what are your
Mm-hmm.
top, I guess, three go-to things that you love doing that calm you, or what led you to the techniques that you even have that you usually do, and
Yeah.
how they have impacted you?
So it's constantly changing because what was working for me a year ago is not working for me today, and
That's
it
so
changes.
smart. Yeah.
Um, right now, I hate saying this because if I had heard this even 2 years ago, I would have rolled my eyes. For me, right now, in the season I'm in,
Hmm.
if my feelings are going, whether it's anxiety, frustration, any sort of negative feeling, I get to the gym. I go for a walk or I lift.
Moving your
And
body is good.
yeah, and I hate that because that was not a viable option for me not too long ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And when I would hear people say that, I'd be like, yeah, that must be nice. Like that you've got the time for that, that you've got this. Um, and so it's one of those things like I feel like it's a privilege. If I wake up in the middle of the night and my brain's just going and I can't shut it off, I can run to the
Hmm.
gym.
That's important.
And
I'm glad that you have that. Yeah,
I feel so fortunate that I get to do that, that I can do that. And
exactly.
it's really interesting because I have people in my life being like, wow, you're so dedicated. And I'm like, I kind of joke. I'm like, well, it's the gym or the bar,
That's
you
fair.
know, like, and it sounds cheeky and funny, but that's like literally where I'm at some days.
Hmm.
And
That makes so
so
much sense.
outside of the gym, um, I have learned I had one day where my anxiety was just crazy high and it was out of nowhere. And I literally sat here in this chair and I put one hand on my diaphragm, one hand on my heart.
Mm.
And I'm in this phase right now where I am approaching myself with such love and compassion
Yes, that's so important.
and how I want to be treated. Because if I can't show up myself for myself that way, there's no way my partner's going to. So I sat
Exactly.
there and I closed my eyes and I just like really connected with myself. And I literally said, okay, sweetheart, what do you need right now?
That is so
And
important.
and I was like, I want a latte. Like that's what I want. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, baby girl, let's go get you a latte. And I got up and drove to Starbucks and got myself a latte and it helped for a little bit.
Hmm.
And and then the anxiety came back later that day. And I was so like I got I got to my office and I was like I was there maybe a half hour. I was like I got to go. Like
Yeah.
I can't be in this. And again, I'm a realtor, so I am fortunate enough to have a career that is time flexible
Hmm.
and I can be like, peace, like this is not flowing today. I'm out. I'll do some more later. But I just like I kept checking in with myself and okay, what's the next thing you need? And
That's
eventually I got to the root of like, okay, oh, this is what's going on.
hmm.
I have some fears around this that I didn't realize. And then it was like waterworks and
Love
crying
it. Letting it
and
out.
being able to work through it.
That is
And
so
so
important.
like right now I'm in the season of when anxiety shows up, I'm treating her like a friend and like, okay, you are trying to protect me. What do you need right now?
Exactly.
What are we doing? Um, because the more I fight it, the harder it is. And
Yeah.
I will also like shake it out, like
Hmm.
full on, because I don't know if you've seen this thing. It feels true. I have not actually seen a scientific study on it, but animals, after they've gone through that fight or flight response,
Oh, yeah. I saw
think about
some
it, they
wolves do it.
shiver.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
shiver. And that supposedly is getting that energy out, releasing that so that the animals are not staying in that state of fight or flight, that
Just like the somatic
anxiety.
workouts. Yeah.
And so it's like literally I will, if I'm walking around getting ready for work or driving to work or doing something, and I start to feel, for me, my anxiety is in my chest and it pulls me in
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like heaviness
Mm-hmm.
and shaking. So I will literally just start flapping my arms. Like I look like a crazy person, but
Better out
I'm
than
like,
in.
I have to work. I literally have to work it out of my body.
That, yeah, that's completely
Yeah.
understandable. So through your experiences with that, I guess what are some of the most valuable lessons? I know you said that to put yourself first. So what have you learned about
Mhm.
yourself and the people surrounding you knowing, and since it's in your family, and how have the lessons that you do know and that you've learned, how have they shaped you and your perspective on your life?
I have to really absorb that.
Oh no.
That's a really big question. Um, I, for me, I need to honor and respect what's going on, because if I try to ignore it, if I try to push it away, then I can't show up for the people in my life.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't be my best. And if I can't be my best,
Mm-hmm.
then I can't show my children what it's like to prioritize yourself.
That is so important. Yes, I love that. So in
Yeah.
your community and all your connections, oh, I'm sorry, were you still?
No, no,
Oh,
you're
okay.
totally fine.
I was just saying in your environment, your community, and your connections,
Hmm.
how has the support from your significant other and your family after, everything just fell? How did that, I guess, support help you? How did that help you
Yeah.
getting through all of this?
Uh, Multiple things. Um, I I have no shame around the fact that I feel these things.
Mm-hmm.
And like my boss, my broker is well aware, and I will check in with her. I cannot tell you how many times I've been like, "Hey, I'm in a down cycle right now." And I let her know uh, my mental health is not doing great. And she will work with me and suggest things and be like, "Do you need that accountability? Do
So
you need someone to meet you
good.
at the office?" And so, like, I have people like that supporting. And then my husband, as I was going through, especially in the first couple of years,
Mhm.
he took so much off my plate for me.
So good.
And there there are not a lot of men who will go and work all day and come home, do the dishes and cook dinner.
Not these
Like
days.
and I know what a gift it was to have that.
Amen. Oh my goodness, I love that for you. Gracious.
I did, yeah, and it was amazing. And he he can read it. I also have bipolar too, which I joke is like the JV version of bipolar. Like it's not as up and down. It's mainly just down with like peaks of up. But he recognizes in me when I'm going through a cycle
Mm.
before I do and calls it out. Um, so I'm so grateful to him for that. And also, I've gotten to a point where I have to take that responsibility on myself as well.
Exactly, yes.
And it is so great to have a supportive partner, but not everyone has that.
No,
And
they don't.
and being able to recognize and having the everyone can have a support person in their life. They can
Hmm.
have someone that they trust. It can be really hard, but someone to say, "Hey, I'm feeling this way. I'm really struggling today." Or someone to be like, "Hey, like I September was an awful month for me. It was so hard and so difficult. And I like basically disappeared from work for like 2.5 weeks. And my
Oh,
broker called
wow.
me and I'm like, "I'm guessing this is the hey, you've disappeared. Are you okay call?" And she was like, "Yes." and and then like I talked through it all with her and she like gave me a solution. And then I was mad at myself. I'm like, I should have come to you with this sooner.
So, oh my gracious. But nobody thinks
Yeah.
that sometimes when you're in your head, sometimes it's like that's
Yep.
the only thing you can just be in until somebody
Yeah.
just, snaps your bubble. And it's like, oh, wait, yeah, there are people here for me.
Hmm. Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
my
And
goodness.
because part of the thing with ADHD is you you're a great problem solver because you can see things from an out outer perspective.
That
And
makes
so
sense.
in my head, like I'm so great at solving problems. I should be able to solve my own. I shouldn't need this.
The blame, yes. That blame will
Hmm.
kill you. So being a woman with all of that, what would you like to see in the mental health field or from people in general that would benefit women with bipolar or ADHD or just with mental health in general? Because women like to put a lot on their plate just because you feel like you're
Hmm.
supposed to, especially if you're a people pleaser or you're just
Yeah.
born a certain way. So, what would you think, or what would you like to see more so in the mental health field that could particularly, benefit women?
This is really fun. Um, so during the pandemic, we moved cross country.
Hmm.
I moved from basically Portland, Oregon to Joplin, Missouri. And it's it's really interesting to me that this is what popped up. Getting the support and the medication I needed once I moved was extremely challenging.
Really? What made it
And
challenging?
I could not find a provider that
Wow.
was available, which part of that was pandemic, but things here were pretty insulated. Like things were pretty normal here and like like we were not locked down. It was amazing. Um, but so finding a provider and I went to four different places before I was able to get medication.
Oh my gracious.
And that took we we arrived the first week of July and I didn't get medication until it was either mid-December or early January.
That is insane.
And
Has it improved?
I don't know. I know the system to get into my provider now. So when I know someone who needs it, I give them like the backdoor access. Like this is how
That
you
is
do it.
so good. Yeah, that's so good.
Um, but it was honestly there was a bit of like not believing me, um, a bit of resistance, I think, um, to the actual medications I was on.
Wow.
Um, and I got this provider, and in the process of it, um, in the middle of that December, my mom got COVID, and she passed away that January 2nd. And so
No.
I went to a place, and I was like, I am in a mental health crisis. My mother is dying. I need my medication to deal with this, and they still couldn't help me.
I
And
don't.
yeah, and so it's like getting that access easily.
Hmm.
And I think that's the thing is it's like because you can find so much on social media, videos, and you can self-diagnose and you can understand that this is what's going on. But getting that access to professional help and medication should not be difficult. You
It
shouldn't
shouldn't.
have to jump through all of these different hoops. Yes, to get medication, you should have a diagnosis.
Hmm.
Absolutely. But let's make that so accessible and shown this is how you do it. This is where you go.
Exactly. That is so true. So, how do you measure your personal growth in relation to having ADHD and the other mental health challenges that you've had in the past? Are
Mm-hmm.
there any specific milestones that you have or achievements that stand out to you?
Um, Accepting it was a big one,
Hmm.
and embracing it, like it was. I I felt really bad because I had people like at church that would come up and be like, "Are you okay?" Because I would post about my struggles
Hmm.
because I didn't want others to feel like they were alone in
That
it.
is so good. People sit in silence so much. That is so good.
Yeah, and I kept posting because I would have people reach out and say, I I struggle with this too. You've empowered me to go and get this figured out. And
Mhm.
so, like, sharing my story, sharing about it has always been important to me, but also, like, that helped me get over to where I can be like, oh, yeah, it's my ADHD brain. Like, it just works a little different. Um, but it's, it, it's actually when I notice a change and I'm
Mhm.
struggling,
Mhm.
then I'm like, oh, I was doing really well. I was on top of it. Things were going well. The dopamine was flowing. Chasing the dopamine has been a huge thing for me. um,
Yeah.
and just like, oh, what sounds fun to do? Like, that's what I do at the gym. Like, someone was trying to tell me, oh, you should be lifting weights to burn fat. I'm like, I'm not trying to burn fat. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
pretty
be
much.
active. And this is what sounds like fun. So
Pretty
this
much.
is what I'm going to do.
Follow your bliss.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I just, when I look back, I'm like, oh, look how far I've come. I'm struggling right now, but I know what it feels like when I'm not.
That is it. Exactly. Always putting a positive spin on it. So, in the end, out of all that, out of everything that you know, learn, and that you built for yourself, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with their mental health or looking to get out of the
Mm-hmm.
box in their head or looking for ways to prioritize their self? What advice would
Yeah.
you give them?
Um, get help, talk to someone, preferably a non-judgmental professional
That is important.
who's going to be neutral and
Hmm.
be able to say, hey, look, like, this is an issue, or like, yeah, you are, like, getting that reassurance, that affirmation, validation, that's the word, that validation of like,
Hmm.
okay, like, that was one of the things I was like, oh, there really is something wrong with me. Like, there's a legitimate
Exactly.
reason for this.
Hmm.
um and just approaching yourself with such love and care and compassion. Write
That's
it out. Like, I started writing poetry this year when I had big feelings, because journaling just didn't feel like the vibe. And
hmm
it's, I I believe my experience has been what you need is going to change, and what you need right now. Like, initially, it was write it all out, journal it, and then it changed. And right now, if I were to try to sit and journal, I would go nuts.
That
Right
makes
now,
sense.
when I need to get my feelings out, I'm doing little videos. I have like a million videos saved on my phone of me just talking and talking through it and processing it out loud. And I'll go back and I'll listen. I'll be like, oh, yeah. But if
That
I
is
were to
so
try to
cool.
sit and write, not a chance. But 5 years ago, I could pretty near fill a journal. So,
That makes so much sense. It's so important that we give ourselves grace. And I love the way that from the way you began talking about it, we can just hear the progression. And
mhm.
even now, it's just like, it's so many good things. And it sounds like it just gets bigger and bigger and better for you every
Mhm.
time you talk about it. And even when you were talking about it, it sounded like you had more insight and then you were just flowing through it. I
That's what I do.
love
That's
that.
that's like literally why I do videos to myself. You can do up to 3 minutes on Snapchat and you can save it and you don't have to share it. You can if you want. But, like, literally, I will just I will just talk.
That is
And
so smart.
yeah.
So what would you did you have any projects or anything you want to share with the people before we got off today?
I wish, if you're in the Southwest Missouri area, I would really love to help you buy a house or sell yours. But like, literally, I'm like, I'm I'm so, like, I felt really really called, like, say something like volunteer, do this. Like this felt like this was a right step for me. If you want to follow me on socials, because I'm like this, it's at the Realtor Bestie everywhere. You can find me, but um, I just I mix this into my life constantly,
Yeah, that's
and
a good flow.
yeah, it's part of everything, and I talk about it. I'm really into manifestation, like a lot,
Yeah,
and just right now I'm just chasing the vibes.
that's the most important thing. Just follow what
Yeah,
makes your heart happy. I love
yeah.
that. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me tonight. I
Yeah,
loved hearing your
absolutely.
story. I hope you enjoyed her amazing, amazing story. I took so much away from this. If you want to contact her, everything is linked in the show notes and in the comments section below. Have a great day.